Look up the word crazy in the dictionary and you might just find an asterisk beside the definition that says, listen to the Subiquitous podcast featuring Sue Duffield and you'll find out what crazy means. Sue's travelogue journey of unfiltered stories, impossible miracles, and faith-filled fun will be revisited right here. So buckle up and let's get going with this humorous travelogue of an unfiltered saint, Subiquitous.
Welcome. It's Christmas week for sure, and we all know that some of the greatest, the most incredible stories and miracles are not always the big ones. In fact, sometimes they're the simplest, most insignificant, little tiny boosters of faith in our lives. I can go back in my life and tell you it was not necessarily the big miracles, but it was the small, little God winks, as we call them, that just proved to me that Jesus is alive and well. And, you know, if you look every day for those little miracles, by far, this year's miracles cannot exclude the precious souls who listen each week to this podcast. And I mean that sincerely. You have become incredible friends of this ministry. We love every single one of you. And because of your blessings and your generosity, we have been able to continue during one of the most difficult financial years of our ministry. And to say that it's been miraculous literally is a serious understatement. We are grateful for every dollar, every PayPal donation, every check, every ounce of encouragement to keep us going. And I really can say this year that you have been our Christmas miracle, no doubt. And you know who you are, and I can't thank you enough. So thank you for continuing to support Sue Duffield Ministries and the Subiquitous podcast and our Couch to Kitchen broadcast every Thursday night on Facebook Live. You know, we're entering into a new year, and we have ways to make your giving this specific time now to be a tax-deductible one if you'd like. And as we approach this year's end, we also have what we call Patreon, and that's spelled Patreon, Patreon, which is a great way to give monthly very easily for as little as $5 a month. We have some giving $5 a month, $10, $25, $50, whatever. So you can get on patreon.com/Sue Duffield for details. But also you can get on SueDuffield.com for a complete list of how your contribution and your year's end contribution for 2020 will help to keep us virtually moving every single week. So we want to stay virtually alive, and we also want to stay in the reality zone as well. And we're hoping that 2021 will bring us live and in person to some events around the country and maybe even around the world, but we're not really even sure of that yet. But I do want to share with you some of the greatest Duffield miracles. And speaking of miracles, Jeff and I celebrated yesterday. We celebrated a 46th wedding anniversary yesterday, and that in itself is a miracle. Am I correct, Jeff?
They said it wouldn't last, or whatever.
I know it did, but it did.
That's at least what your father said, anyway.
And I love the waitresses. You know, we had a nice steak dinner yesterday, and it was fun because we've noticed just the last couple of weeks eating in restaurants that waitresses have been extremely nice. Have you noticed that?
They have. And of course, we have, you know, and I both know that we have made it a point for you and I to be nice to waitresses.
It really is a nice thing to do.
It's a funny thing how it works in this world. When you're nice to people, generally, they're nice to you. Now, there's idiots out there. Did he just say that?
Yeah.
But, you know, that are going to be who they are regardless. They're unhappy people. But generally speaking, if you're nice to people, they return the favor. And
like we've said, too, many times, it's when you're sitting in a booth and you realize that the waiter or the waitress is making, you know, a minimum amount of money and they're really depending upon their tips, this is really a great opportunity for someone of faith to walk into a restaurant and say, hey, this is my opportunity to bless somebody.
Yep.
And it was so fun to do that yesterday and a couple of days ago. It was just fun. And so we hope to continue to do that. And it just makes me feel so good to do that.
Yep. It's a lot of fun.
So, some Christmas miracles that you and I have experienced in our lifetime. I have a few I wrote down. I'll never forget that lovely
Well, the fact that you decided to marry me is a Christmas miracle.
Oh, brother.
Well, is it not?
It is. It's a miracle that we haven't killed each other after all these years. No, that's not true.
No, I don't. We, like everybody else, we've had our moments.
Yeah, that's true. But we do get along. That's the funny part. We
actually did like each other long before we really liked each other. When we really fell in like.
We fell in a very serious state of like. And I think what we've tried to do, and we have a nice compliment on Facebook yesterday from our daughter, actually, who said, thank you for being a role model for commitment. I thought,
was
wow.
Was that the part before or after she called us goofballs?
that was after she called us goofballs.
I think they call that a left-handed compliment.
I know, but that's okay. You know what? We take every one of those whenever we can.
Oh, and then we return the favor whenever we get an opportunity as well.
I know. So anyway, my favorite time, and Jeff and I sang in Canada for a broadcast. And while we were in Canada, this is many, many years ago, we were there for a week-long series of TV tapings and live broadcasts. And my music was registered with BMI, which is a licensed
Music Incorporated.
That's right, licensing organization that pays royalties at the time. So all week long, we did all of my music, which was around 12 songs, and we completely forgot about it. I think that was something in like the summer.
Actually, it was actually earlier than that because you got a check in the late summer that year.
Yeah.
A small check.
And
then come Christmas time, what was it? I don't even know. It was probably 3 or 4 days before Christmas or something
because
like that.
It was
close.
So unexpected. And
it was close.
This was probably 1992 or something like that.
At best. Maybe a little earlier than that.
Maybe 91. David
somewhere
was
like that, yeah.
6 or 7 or...
Yeah.
And let's just say we were on staff at a church and we weren't making a whole lot of money at the time. And when we got this check in the mail, I mean, it was, what was it? $1,200?
Well, the first check in August was almost $600.
Yeah, we were doing.
The second check that came days before Christmas was $1,500.
Yeah, oh my goodness! And
which
was
30 some years ago. Well, $1,500 today is nothing to sneeze at, but 30 years ago, that was not only sneezing. That was coughing and choking music.
Right. And that was an incredible miracle for us because we really hadn't spent much money on Christmas that year, and
nope.
We just had this brainiac of an idea of buying an Olympic-size trampoline for our kids. And if that wasn't just absolutely...
If you ever want to know what to do with your kids that are driving you crazy in the house during the summer, you got to get a good one.
It was a good one, and we called immediately on an 800 number. There was no ordering through computers then.
No.
And someone gave me, in fact, I think I called a gymnastic organization in Delaware, and they referred me to this place where they ordered.
We spent $300.
I know, for a trampoline.
Again, in retrospect, in 2000 or 2020, that's where we're at. $300 for a trampoline is probably not a lot of money, but it was a lot of money back then.
And our kids, they still talk about it. That was their favorite gift of all time.
Yep.
And
miraculously, neither of them got seriously injured.
No, they didn't. Nope. We did break our neighbor's kid's arm.
He did it himself.
Yeah. He jumped off the roof of the house onto the trampoline and then was catapulted into Connecticut.
I would not have recommended had I been anywhere around when it happened.
No, but my word, if that wasn't a miracle. Well, another miracle too, when Jeff and I were doing several series of Christmas events, we did a couple for the Rotary Club of in Newark and Newcastle County, Delaware, and one of our dear friends handed me a Christmas card one night after we were done, and I didn't really open it up right away, got in the car and opened it up, and there were 10 crisp, brand new $100 bills.
Yep.
And we immediately
And that was like a week or 10 days before Christmas.
And so we had prayed, oh God, you are our provider. You are, our supporter. You're the provision. We've lived by faith our whole entire life. And to have things like this happen time and time again is a real testimony of the faith of God. And it's just over and over again. And sometimes we don't talk about it enough, I don't think. We don't talk about the incredible ministry of giving. But I have to say, I'm just gonna pull it all out today, because there are just definite times when God has come through financially for us that makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
And so that was one. Another one was when we were singing Christmas Eve and our fan belt broke on our van.
We were in East Brunswick, New Jersey, doing a Christmas Eve service. Might I say, the only Christmas Eve service in 46 years that we were scheduled to do outside of a church where we were on staff.
That's true. That's right.
Yeah,
and I remember it being cold too. And snowy and icy.
And we had left our children with my parents, who lived in southern New Jersey, approximately 2 hours away from where we were in northern New Jersey. We finished the service, jumped in the van, and we drove down to my mother and father's place in southern Jersey to pick them up. And then we were headed over to Delaware to put the kids to bed so that the next morning they can get up in the presents and the whole bit.
Right.
We were 20 minutes from my parents' house, and you were driving. And all of a sudden we heard
that was an awful sound.
And it was like 12:30 at night.
I know. And who are we going to find? Who are we going to find on Christmas Eve that can come rescue us?
Nobody.
Especially on that rural Route 77.
And that part of New Jersey on
nobody,
Christmas Eve at 12:30.
Oh.
Santa Claus ain't even out there. He's gone.
He's
from
gone.
That.
He's taking a nap.
We had, you may not remember this, we had the first of our cell phones, which was not a cell phone.
It was a bag phone.
It was a bag phone with a cable that came out that you plugged in the cigarette lighter.
Right,
and then the phone itself was a phone receiver with an antenna, just like, your house phone.
Right.
And I picked that thing up. We plugged it in. You said all the steering is gone.
Oh, man,
and I jumped out.
Me so.
I had a flashlight somewhere, and I jumped out and looked down underneath the hood of the van.
Yeah.
And there was a fan belt missing. And of course, your steering now was just, the power steering was gone. You could still steer it once you got it moving.
Right.
And I called my father.
On the bag phone.
On the bag phone. And he said, just keep moving.
Keep moving.
I said, well, the fan's not turned to cool. He said, just keep moving.
Well, that's true, because it was cold enough outside that it would be okay.
It was below freezing that night.
Yeah.
So I did some serious, I started driving, did some serious speed driving.
Yes, you did.
And we got it to my parents' house somewhere around 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And he called my sister, who brought her what I used to call her midget car. I forget what it was, but it was a Chevy something the other. It barely we
got home safe and sound.
And we got that and threw the kids in the back of that and drove it home. And my brother-in-law the next morning went to his garage.
He did on Christmas Day
and found an old fan belt that he had there that somehow fit the van, and he put it on Christmas Day morning. Yeah. And then they drove it over to Delaware for us. Right. And then I took, the next day or whatever, took it to the garage, got a new fan belt put on it. But that was a crazy night.
It was a crazy night.
But it all worked out.
But it worked out. And I have to say, it was a miracle. It was a miracle that we didn't blow up the engine. Yep. And it's a miracle that we weren't on the side of the road with our thumbs out saying, hey, we need help to get somewhere.
You probably would still have been there if you'd done that, because there was nobody on those roads that night.
Well, I got to tell you another supernatural story. And I love the supernatural, and I love so much when God does things that we have absolutely no explanation for. Jeff, we were in a boot store in Minneapolis, and this was the Christmas right before my father died. And I remember going into this boot store and picking out a pair of black dress boots. They were Ariat boots, and out of the thousands of boots that were there, they were the one that I selected. And so I was so excited about my first pair of Ariat boots. And do you remember when I got home and I'm wearing them during the Christmas time, and my dad had passed away that July, and I was going through my father's closet. My mom said to go through all the closet, and I found a box.
I know what you're going to say.
A box of my father's boots.
Yep.
And inside the box was a brand new pair of black Ariat boots, the same exact model, except his was men's, mine was women's.
And you did not realize
that I had no idea.
He was a fan of Ariat
None
boots.
whatsoever. Never really even heard of the name brand, which is kind of silly now for me, but just the whole context of that supernatural feeling of, wow, there was such a connectiveness to me and my dad that Christmas, that I was wearing literally the same exact boots, except I was a size 8, and of course he was a size 10.5 men's. But even so, just that whole process, it's just like a little God wink again, that he's paying attention to the little details of your life, and especially that year when we were starting to do Christmas music, and I was just a puddle. And every song that I did just reminded me of my father. And there will be a lot of people listening today, in fact, that you've had loved ones that have passed on, and it's tough during the holidays because you're thinking about them. But can I encourage you today to think about the good things, and think about the great things, and think about the miraculous, the stuff that has happened.
Right.
I also remember your dad helping me with WNRK radio, and we needed a Santa Claus on our remote broadcasts.
Yep. And he fit the bill in several ways.
He did. I mean, he looked it, acted it, and he was the best. In fact, Al Campagnon, who was my boss at WNRK, of all the Santa Clauses they had in over 25 years of him owning that radio station, he said that George Duffield was the best Santa Claus.
Well, Dad, a couple things. Dad always, he was a big proponent of Christmas.
He loved
for
Christmas.
All
he
the
probably
reasons.
loved Christmas more than anybody I ever knew.
I think so.
Truthfully.
And he had a good time with it. He spent too much money at Christmas. He bought too many presents for people.
That's right.
Habitually.
I know.
He went too far with it every year, and my mother used to
and
look
would
at
purposely buy the kids stuff that had 9,000 parts.
Oh, that he
just
did
to make us
intentionally.
frustrated.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. And would have bought a set of drums for my son if I'd let him, but I told him I'd break his arm if he did, so he did not do that. But he would go overboard. And to his mind, it wasn't overboard, but that's just the way.
No, of course not.
Yeah, but that was just the way he was, and it was a big deal to him in our church, as we talked about before. We had our Christmas programs, and all the kids would get up and say their quote unquote pieces.
Right.
And my father, as the Sunday school superintendent, was the MC of the program, and he made it a big deal.
Well, and he had social skills.
Yeah, exactly. He had no problem talking, and
the kids loved
I don't
him.
think it's it's carried on in other generations, but he had no problem talking.
No.
So my mother, at the place she worked, they made Santa Claus suits.
Yeah.
And she bought
Rennock, which was Connors
right.
spelled backwards.
Okay.
That the Connors owned the store in Vineland, and they named it Rennock. Did you know that?
I didn't.
Oh,
I also, through her working there, I found out that my mother liked, what was the guy's name? The rock and roll singer. Not Bruce.
Tom Jones.
No.
Well, I know she loved Tom Jones.
That was before that. That was before, no.
Huey Lewis and the News.
That's it.
My mother-in-law loved Huey Lewis and the News.
I found that out one day. I said, Mom.
Yeah, man. She's
you
getting
like
down.
Huey Lewis. And it just didn't
Especially
fit.
his Christmas album.
Oh, and because they played it on the intercom where she worked.
Right.
Anyway, she bought the Santa Claus suit, brought it home.
Yeah.
And my father was at the stage of life where he fitted in perfectly. And oh my gosh, this little kid came out of this 50-some 60-year-old man playing Santa Claus, and he got a whole new life for a good 10 years playing when you were working there, and other places too where he would go and play Santa Claus. And he was bigger than life with it. The ho 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 you could hear all over the place, and he made the big deal with kids and all, and they ate it all up. And you're right. I mean, your owner of your radio station always was. He would ask specifically to have Dad.
Now here's the miracle that I want to talk about that our audience does not know. George Duffield was Santa Claus for me on the remote broadcast, and Al would give him about $125 every time just to thank him for being Santa Claus. And there was one year we did almost 13 broadcasts.
Yeah.
And at the end of every single broadcast, when Al would hand him a check, he'd get in the car and he'd hand it to me signed.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the miracle of that was, he wasn't doing it for the money.
No.
And it was a way that he could help us.
Right.
And just that whole, like I say, the backstories of your father and I working together.
Right. And if you can't discern a pattern here, let me just fill it in. Christmas time for gospel singers is not a time,
right,
generally speaking, where you make a lot of money.
Well, and we used to when we were doing Christmas concerts.
Oh, well,
but,
some of them, but there were, in the years that we're talking about,
I know.
We were on staff at churches, and so we didn't have those extra
right,
Christmas banquet concerts and such. There were some years, we did very well, but you generally lose a couple of weekends of concerts that you normally have in the month. Plus, it's the end of the year, and also you're spending more money for Christmas presents. So
I've got a couple more Christmas miracles here too. I want to fit in real quick that are just astounding, and it's not necessarily involving us, but they're such great stories to tell, and they're true because we just heard about one. The Bridge Ministry here in Nashville, Tennessee, under the direction of Candy Christmas, is such an incredible ministry to the children, the homeless families, and a lot of school-aged children that go without lunch and hot meals during the week. It is incredible what they do. Well, every year they have this Bridge to Christmas.
Right.
And, I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of people receiving gifts and new toys, wrapped toys. They spend weeks wrapping these toys. Well, the very first time that they did this, one of their attendees that helped them wrap, they said they wrapped about 300 presents. And when they got to the Jefferson Street Bridge that night to hand out presents, Candy was absolutely out of her mind because she started to count the people in line, and they realized there were over 500 in line, but they only had 300 gifts in the truck.
Right.
So they started praying.
Right.
And just like the little boy with the loaves and the fishes, they said, God, you're going to have to extend this somehow, some way.
Yep.
And would you believe, I saw Dolores on that night crying, telling this story.
Yep.
And she says, we just started handing them out and handing them out and handing them out. And there was not one person.
Not only did no one go without a present.
That's right.
But then she got back to the headquarters afterwards with the truck.
And they opened up the truck.
There were 75 more presents that they had never given out.
That's right.
After everyone there got a present. And they were 200 short to start.
And like you say, if you didn't have eyewitnesses.
Right.
And Dolores said over and over again, if I didn't see it with my own eyes, I would have never believed this. But God did an absolute miracle on that Christmas night.
Yep.
While they were handing out gifts, and everybody left with one when they only prepared 300, and there were well over 500 people.
Right.
Oh, I love this stuff.
Yep.
Well, and another story of miracles was the night I did a Christmas concert, Jeff, in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and it's in my book, Ubiquitous. I left that night, and it was a horrible storm. It was way up North Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area, and it was just a blinding snowstorm. And the pastor and his wife just tried so hard to talk me into staying. I probably should have, but I said, no, I have to be in a church in Elizabethtown Sunday morning. That was a Saturday night. And if I get over the mountain, I heard there was just rain. So I was praying, and I thought, well, I'll just hit Interstate 81. Well, what happened was I got in my car and I started to drive, and I could not see one single thing out the windshield. And I didn't even have cell phone service. And I remember driving down this road that I thought was a road. I didn't know what it was. And I just said, Lord, you're going to have to get me off this mountain. I have no idea where I am. I don't have a clue. And all of a sudden I see at the bottom of the hill, I see a little light. And the closer I get to it, I realize it's a gas station. Mm-hmm. I pull into the gas station, and there's an open sign. And I get out of my car, and I go busting in through the door, and you can hear a little jingle, like the door has a little bell at the top. And when I go in there, this woman looked at me like I was Sasquatch. She said, "What in the world? Where did you come from?" And I said, "I came up from over this hill over here." And she said, "What hill?" I said, "The one behind me." She said, "There's no road there." I said, "Well, there is now."
Really?
And the whole miraculous part of that was when I was only in that shop for about maybe 5 minutes. And when we looked out into the driveway, there were no tire tracks and there were no footprints of me walking in with the snow.
Scary.
And to this day, I have no clue how God got me off that mountain. And from what I understand, the roads were so treacherous. All roads were shut down. And suddenly she said to me, "You know what? If Interstate 81 is only just an eighth of a mile, get on it. They have one lane open." And I got on that and drove for about 15 miles. And after that, it was just wet roads. But I keep thinking over and over again, the incredible miracles that God got me through.
Yep.
And, you try to explain Christmas miracles to people and you try to explain that to them. But actually, unless you actually walk the walk and talk the talk,
yep,
it feels like you're in some kind of a made-up Hallmark movie.
Yep.
I would love to write the script of a movie and just basically talk about the reality of Christmas miracles and not have to fabricate anything and not have to make anything up.
Yep.
Anyway,
I understand.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey.
Well, there's too many of them to be, as they say, coincidences.
Right. There is none.
Right.
And
exactly.
But
right.
my miracle today is that you stuck with me for 46 years.
Oh dear.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
It's a miracle that we've got this done, actually.
Well, we're not quite done. I got a few more things I am going to say.
Oh, there's a shock. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go ahead and start Christmas.
Well, you know what? There's some damask candy out there.
I'm well aware.
I know. And it'll be a miracle you'll have anything left for me.
Oh, when it's yes. Oh, of course. I'm so stingy and I steal everything.
Oh, I know. Damask is my favorite little chocolate store in southern New Jersey when we go back home. And it's like, oh, those peanut cream clusters are to die for. So don't eat them all. Don't you dare.
I wouldn't think
all
of
right.
it. You know better.
Okay.
I wouldn't think of it.
All right.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. He's such a good man. I'll keep him for a little bit longer. But there was one Christmas Eve when Annie and I spent a few hours in the kitchen and we were baking Mom Duffield's candy cane cookies. Now, if you've not had these, I promise you, I will give you the recipe. I'll put it on my website. They are fabulous. It wasn't as easy, though, as the recipe suggested. In fact, we tackled it and made a huge amount of red and white batter, but we forgot to add the granular sugar in one batch, but then couldn't remember if we added it along with the powdered sugar in the second batch. It was a mess, but it didn't matter. The batter tasted great anyway, and the secret was that crazy almond extract. Oh, and even better, we once again possessed that Betty Crocker cookie book thanks to Amazon and Annie's search. If you've not seen the Betty Crocker cookie book, man, get it on Amazon. It's a great, great book. So before Thanksgiving that year, I lost one of my pretty green peridot and diamond earrings somewhere in or outside the house. And before Mom passed away in 2003, she gave me those earrings, and I was particularly irritated at myself for losing one now after all these years. So I wrapped the one lone earring in a tissue and carefully stored it in my jewelry box. So getting ready that Christmas Eve morning, I glanced at the rolled tissue in my jewelry box. And this, I promise you, this is what I said out loud. I said, God, this would surely be a great day to find that earring, considering Annie and I are going to bake her cookies from the cookie book tonight. And I literally said that out loud. So we laughed as we tried to roll out the dough, the white and the red, twisting and pinching the strands. Our candy cane shapes weren't too pretty. Mine looked more like a flat Peter Max creation, but they sure did smell and taste good. I decided to make the leftover batch green and turn them into wreaths. Much easier to roll out and bend in a circle. Well, we laughed and thought, Mom, no wonder you were in the kitchen for days making these things. My wreaths baked up to look more like monster truck tires. And this was the first year or two for me to put lights on my outdoor shrubs around our porch here in Tennessee. And it was also the first Christmas without our pop-up George and our brother Wayne, and lots of thoughts and emotions for sure. I took a break from the hot kitchen to catch a glimpse of that awesome full moon that night. I'll never forget it. And outside on the front yard, while I walked across the grass, I saw something shining and reflecting from the lights. It was flickering as if it was on fire. And I bent down to see what it was, and behold, there was the other peridot diamond earring. Are you kidding me? My green birthstone diamond peridot earring that Mom and Pop-Up gave me. I ran into the house and shouted, "I can't believe this! I found the other earring!" And the likelihood that I'd drape Christmas lights on my shrubs this year was so rare. And the chances that I'd go outside to see the full moon that night, well, it's possible. And the change of the cookie dough to green, well, that's crazy. And the reflection of a flickering green twinkle light revealing my treasured green peridot earring in a sea of green grass? Are you kidding? Absolutely a miracle. A surreal green miracle. Thank you, Mom, for smiling upon us that night. And thank you, God, for showing me how to pay attention again to the littlest of miracles. And there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were greatly afraid. Then the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign to you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger." And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men." My friend, that is the greatest Christmas miracle of all. We'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in to episode number 32. There's nothing like miracles at Christmas. I hope you find yours, and when you do, write it down and share your story. I love you. Merry Christmas.